Oh, I didn't have anything in particular. Um, I did see recently, though, that I think you all know who Stefan Wolpers is.
I've seen the name.
Yeah, I've heard the name.
I've seen the posts.
I've heard the posts.
I think he's based in Germany. Food for Agile Thought or something like that. Um, and I like to monitor what's going on. He does kind of a hoovering up of Agile topics, curates them, and puts out a post, I don't know, weekly, something like that. And I think his most recent one, he actually, he must have been reading my mind because, you know, we often talk about um, having lots of tools in your toolbox. As a coach, and the more you coach, the more tools, hopefully, you have, and you know how to use them in the appropriate time and place. And he had assembled this um, 8 laws, and I was curious about it, so I thought, all right, I'm gonna bite. So I went and looked at them, and they really essentially are a lot of the laws that we tend to refer to, Conway's law, Goodhart's law, blah blah blah. And but he just kind of encapsulated them in the 8 laws that he likes to follow. And one of them was Conway's law, which, like I said, we know about. Brooks' law. Um, are you familiar? We're familiar with Brooks' law. We may not know it as Brooks' law.
That's what I'm thinking.
In the Mythical Man Month, adding more manpower to a late project makes it later. Apparently, that's Brooks' law. We always knew that maxim was true, but I never knew it was called Brooks' law. So, um, Hackman's law. The larger a group, the more process problems members encounter in carrying out their collective work. We knew that too, but I never knew there was a name for it. It's called Hackman's law. Goodhart's law. We've talked about that one before. When a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. A lot of times people attribute that to W. Edwards Deming, and I think he's said that before, but apparently it was not. Um, it wasn't something that he came up with. It was actually an anthropologist that summarized it. So that's kind of interesting. Larman's law. This is interesting. Larman's law. So I thought, wow, Craig Larman's got a law now.
That's what I thought. The less guy.
Yes.
I wonder how I get that passed.
Yeah, exactly.
And what is it?
You
Yeah,
might
what is
ask
Larman's law?
That's organizations are implicitly optimized to avoid changing the status quo, middle and first level manager, and specialist positions and power structures. Now that's kind of a run-on sentence, but I think the gist of what he's saying is they are structured um, to avoid changing that status quo, and thus this is what we run into all the time.
Deliberately, or is it just kind of what is that an emergent?
Well, he didn't say deliberately.
Okay.
He says implicitly, and so it's probably an outgrowth of just kind of the way the hierarchical management philosophies that are taught in business schools and thus rolled out into most large organizations. So
Yeah, I'd wonder if it's like an emergent property of a complex system that it tends to perpetuate itself, as opposed to somebody saying, "Don't change this."
that's something we could delve into, actually, because I have my own opinions, but opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So anyway,
Another thing to
I
beat.
digress. Parkinson's law. I've never heard this before. I mean, the explanation, yes, we know. I didn't know it was called Parkinson's law. Um, Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion.
Yes.
Yes, we know this. And he's saying, well, this is the reason why time boxing is such a valued practice. I didn't know that work expands so as to fill time available for its completion was called Parkinson's law.
I've heard that, but I don't know who Parkinson is.
And Larman's law was a
medical,
run-on,
exactly.
right? So, yeah.
Sentence.
Yeah. I thought it was legit, but I didn't know that it was that easy to get your own law. And who passed that law?
What law would you like to pass? What would Singleton's law be?
Oh, geez. Make it as simple as possible. Simplify.
That's pretty good. Marchi. What's Marchi's law?
The exit is behind the elephant in the room.
Marchi had this. He had this holster just in case I asked the question.
Nice the way you whipped that one out.
Yeah.
See, relaxed.
The exit is behind the elephant in the room. So in other words, you have to confront the thing. So this reminds me of the Knights of the Round Table thing, where all the knights have to enter the dark forest at the point where it looks the darkest to them. And the psychological implications is the thing you don't want to look at is your path to, I don't know, salvation or whatever. Same idea?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Same idea. How about you, Matt?
Beam's law. Ping me in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I got nothing. I don't know. I don't know what that would be. Let me think about it.
Would it have something to do with mental models?
Yeah, it would. It would have to do with mental models.
I think it does. And
it would be something like what you're seeing depends on where you're standing. Like there is no real final truth.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You're gonna go existential on us now, huh?
Well, you keep looking for the final door, and it's like, no, there's more doors. As far as you go, it's turtles all the way down, apparently.
Well, everybody wants that, but
yeah,
we're responsible for our own niceness or happiness, aren't we?
So this has gone beyond an Agile thing straight into an existential thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's this existential thing. That's fine.
Let's get back to laws.
Totally.
Laws.
Little's law.
Okay.
Little's law, and we know this. I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
for the listeners, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So work in progress equals throughput times lead time. So.
Yeah, and you can break it down, and you can do the what's the thing I'm thinking of? You can derive different parts of that equation. So if what you need to know is lead time or throughput or anything, you can calculate based on what you have. You can find the others, which is super useful to know.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Occam's razor. Now this is interesting. I've known about Occam's razor for quite a while. I never saw it referred to in an Agile context, but I guess it's natural. My understanding, however, of Occam's razor is that whatever the simplest answer is the likely cause of something.
Is that an oversimplification of the real razor?
Well, he's saying, and I'm going to quote here, he does qualify it with, in software development, Occam's razor promotes simplicity in designing and building software systems. So he maybe took a little bit of literary license with that, maybe. But it's basically the same thing. Keep it simple, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, the word here that springs to mind is parsimonious.
Ooh.
Parsimonious. Sometimes I listen to scientists talk, and they're like, of all the explanations possible for this, here's the one with the fewest
parsems.
No, you could say to cause this effect, maybe you need this and this and this and this and this and this, or maybe you just need this and this. Like the simplest possible explanation is most likely to be correct because reality is kind of simple when you break it down to the cause and effect.
When you break it down.
When you break it down.
Right. Because if you don't break it down, ain't probably not.
This is another one we could go down because like the idea of transformation and organizational design and like what's in your framework, like there's a lot of these approaches that have a lot of stuff that are not particularly parsimonious necessarily, and there's a lot of arguments over what's essential and what's not.
How many ways can you use
parsimonious? And what does it have to do with parsimons? Parsimons?
Well, parsimon is the simplest fruit in the whole fruit family. I think that's well established.
Oh, okay. You gonna back that one up?
No, I think it's well established, but I haven't checked. Frankly. I don't know. It is, but persimmon is a fruit, isn't it? Yes, that's true.
Persimmon
is
a fruit, but I don't think
parsimon is a thing.
It is.
Is that just a noun you derived from the adjective?
Persimmon is a fruit
from your brain, maybe.
It looks a lot like a tomato.
A persimmon.
A persimmon.
He just looked it up.
Persimmon.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But parsimonious.
No, these would be called homonyms, things that sound the same but are very different.
This isn't a language show.
It's homonymical. This comparison you're making. So anyway, yes, the Occam's razor. A lot of places in Agile, you could take Occam's razor, the one with the 5 blades and the lubricating strip, and cut off a bunch of stuff, and it might be a better life. That's all. That's all I meant. What parts you'd cut off? There's your argument, but that's the idea.
Certainly in a software world, in a technology world, there can be substantial complexity. And we see that all the time in the teams that we're working with and the products that they're developing. But the organization itself has a degree of complexity. And the higher the complexity,
the hellish error it is to work there.
Yes, exactly. And that springs forth a lot of opportunity for us to try to unravel. So if you think about a ball of yarn or a knotted something or other, the more complex it is, the harder it is to, unknot, unravel, and you've got to have an enormous amount of patience.
Or a sword.
Or a sword. My dad would say, why don't you just cut the damn
Gordian knot.
Right.
So is it related to the concept of inherent simplicity? Go
ahead.
Well, there's this idea. Goldratt, the guy who wrote that book, The Goal,
Eli.
talks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Eli Goldratt talks about how people live in a world of apparent complexity, like things look complex. Mm-hmm. They have complex problems, and so therefore they assume that they need a complex solution. Mm-hmm. And he says this is really devastating because actually, if you break reality down, the cause and effect is like simple, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you can take all of the universe and explain it with E equals mc squared, right? There's a very small in the world of physics. There's maybe not. There's a small number of things that describe it if you break it down. Now that might be a false analogy. I don't know, but that's the idea. That's like you need to cut through. You want to exploit the hidden simplicity as opposed to here's your complicated problem. Here's an equally complicated solution. Now go ahead and just sort of iterate on the intersection of those two, and good luck to you. As opposed to no, just do this.
Matt, you posited though that and trying to convey what Eli Goldratt was saying, that complex situations the illusion of complexity
Mm-hmm.
causes us to conjure up complex solutions. And I don't know that I necessarily buy that. I think, from my observation, and this is not always, but a lot of times the teams, the organizations that we work with really do want simple solutions to complex problems. The issue is not that they're automatically wanting to come up with a complex solution, it's that they see a complex problem, they want to apply a simple solution, but without breaking down the complex problem into simpler components, it's really difficult. You can come up with a simple solution, but is it going to work? That's the key. And the only way to make it work is to understand, in my mind, what are the components of the complex problem? Because then you can get to the root of what is the real issue here.
So when you say simple solution, that they want a simple solution, are they looking for a pithy, quick response, or are they looking for, because big problems are not always a simple solution. You might be able to say what you need to do quickly, but there's not going to be a, oh, punt's good, just go with punt. But we do get folks coming to us a lot with well, just tell me the answer. That's, in my mind, just tell me the answer is looking for a simple solution. It's whether it's a hard answer or not.
Yeah, maybe the simplicity has to be in the form of a law or a principle that
does it.
It's simple. Well, it's simple in the way that you abstract out the essential cause and effect, but then the way that you apply that may be more complicated because you have to figure out how to apply it in a particular context. And there's a bunch of different ways you could apply it, but you're still trying to apply this basic principle. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking when you go cause up, the thing that comes to mind is root cause analysis and getting down to the root cause, asking enough whys and getting down to the root cause. And I'm sitting there trying to work this out in my head. When you attack a symptom instead of attacking the root cause, which is easier? Like, is there a simpler, so the closer you get to the root, is the solution simpler? Or is that universally probably not true?
I think there's a tendency to apply the simplicity to the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
And it frequently doesn't work. Well, we tried that. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, why is that? And maybe it's because you didn't break the problem down to truly, to your point, Mike, get to the root cause, because maybe there's a different solution, maybe equally as simple, but if it's directed at the root cause, we know that everything is, some of us believe that everything is connected. Okay. And so if you're just treating the symptom, that's, the term we've always used, Band-Aid approach. But if we understand that the patient has an open sore and it's been open for a long time, maybe let's break it down and understand all the components here. It might actually be cancer or something. And so giving them, a Band-Aid isn't really going to help a heck of a lot now, is it?
Yeah.
It was a simple approach, but it didn't work. Why? Because you didn't understand the complexity of the problem, because you didn't take the time. And I think this is really what it all amounts to. It's that missing step, taking the time to truly understand the problem in all of its complexity.
There's another aspect of this, and it echoes something we said before, where you, in a previous session, we were talking about flow, and we're talking about the constraints and the theory of constraints, and trying to putting any effort into anything that isn't the constraint on the system is going to be a waste of effort, because you won't speed up the throughput. Wasting time on fixing the symptom of a problem, is that going to improve the system? Right? You're attacking the symptom. You're not attacking the root cause. If you attack the root cause, will that have a bigger impact? Broader impact?
The root cause being the constraint?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at a system and you're looking at a piece of the system and you're saying the constraint is there, that's the part we need to speed up. And we can see a symptom there, so we're going to attack the symptom instead of attacking the root cause behind the symptom.
Yeah. That's kind of what I meant when I said people want complicated solutions. So to take this example, right? What people might say is, we need a way to manage all of the interactions along the whole value stream. Right? We have to make sure that we understand all the flows out of all the other machines and blah, blah, blah. And the inherent simplicity in that example is, no, just focus on the constraint. And that it frees you up from having to worry about all the other stuff and managing you just don't even have to keep track of it on some level. You really just have to focus on the one thing.
Right.
So it simplifies your approach greatly.
We always come back to
inherently.
We always come back to the example of a team that can't finish their work in a sprint. Right. And saying, if only we could finish that work in the sprint. And they come at you with all sorts of, well, maybe we could lengthen the sprint, because if we lengthen the sprint, then we'll have more time to finish what we've taken.
But work expands, remember?
Right. But work is going to expand to fill available time. And if the reason you're not finishing is not because there's not enough time in the sprint, it's because you're not working efficiently within the sprint. So you're not using
or too many interruptions,
or too many, congruent or concurrent tasks, or whatever is if you don't understand what it is, your solution is pointless. You're not going to, but you can be pretty sure that lengthening the sprint is just going to cause people to want to shovel more work into the sprint, which is not going to make this problem any better.
Yeah. I was on a team once where they basically, in retrospect, they took too much stuff into the sprint backlog. And so they had too much stuff to think about. They were too much work in process, led to too much context switching, and too many, you couldn't have this conversation without having this conversation, without having this conversation. And so they went down this path of saying, well, there's so much work, we have to work harder to manage the work. We have to spend more time managing the work. If that takes longer, we'll just do that. And so the stand-up went from 15 minutes to, I remember distinctly a guy saying, I don't care how long it takes, we're going to get to the root cause of each one of these things. If they'd have to be an hour and a half stand up every day, that's what we're going to do to get to the bottom. And he was chasing a complex solution, I would say, in this, to use this analogy. The inherent simplicity in that is, how about you shrink your backlog for the sprint, and then you'll have time to have all these conversations. And when you get something done, then you can start the next thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, the total throughput you get in the same amount of time, I would predict would go up, even though you're doing less complex mental overhead, juggling fewer things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Here's a crazy thought. If you can't figure out how to deliver a lot of things, start by figuring out how to deliver one.
But this guy was completely convinced that if we needed to work harder, we needed a way to manage more stuff better. We need to get better at managing more stuff. And it's exactly the opposite. He needed a simpler approach.
Yep.
So to unpack that, did you ever understand or discover why they were taking too much into the sprint to begin with?
No, my role there was not focused on that problem. I was in a different focus. And so but that is the question. Like, yeah, okay. I was related to, yes, expectations set somewhere else, I'm sure. Yeah, but no, to answer your question, I don't know.
Okay. Because, I think probably in the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of my focus has been upstream to understand the true inflows and that pressure that
Yep.
impacts the behaviors of the team, and trying to help that upstream work inflow get smaller chunks, smoother flow. Um, Hopefully, with the idea of reducing the downstream pressure. Um, because let's face it, when you are handed a big hairy monster as a team,
Hmm.
and it's the product owner maybe says, we need you to get this done this sprint. Problem is, it's a big hairy monster, and there may be loads of complexity in there. And if the pressure is just write some code and deliver it.
Right.
Yeah. Just get moving.
Exactly. Why are you sitting there looking?
Instead of
Right.
I'm actually, instead of coding.
What's the quickest experiment we can perform to get progress on, or to take a chunk out of the hairy monster, just to get a handle on the hairy monster, but do it in a series of deliveries of something instead of just jump in and splash around in the pool for 2 weeks.
Well, that sounds delightful. I would fly in an airplane to do that.
I like reference.
If it happened to yeah, if it happened to me today, I would say something like, "Well, you've built a push system, and you probably want to move to a pull system because you took the whole pizza and shoved it in your mouth, and now you're choking on it,
and it's hot.
And it's hot. And
do you know today is National Pizza Day?
I did know that. I was wondering if Matt did that because it was National Pizza Day.
Why I dropped the reference.
Okay.
No, it's not. I didn't know that. But
there has been a long pause.
Jeff, did we get through all 8 laws? Were there more laws?
We did.
Okay.
And honestly, I think there are probably plenty of other laws that we talk about, or have talked about, in that the whole Agile realm. The law of the customer, the law of the small team, and the law of the network. But those are Steve Denning's 3 laws. But so
well, then there's rules, just like the 80-20 rule and things like that.
Pareto's principle, the Pareto principle. So yeah, and so I think.
Sorry.
I think all of these are things that not just coaches, but anybody can add to their tool chest. And if you're following these laws, and I think they're fairly generic, but if you're applying them or following them, they can shape how you do things regardless of the domain that you're in. So, a lot of us tend to think in terms of technology, but the reality is, and we had somebody on APLN last night. He was a theater guy, and Mike,
I was there for a little while before you showed up. I had to.
Thank you for that.
Had to go jump out. Had some serious entertaining to do.
Okay.
Contradiction.
Well, that's good. That's good. But he was a theater guy, and he wanted to understand. I don't know if he was in a quandary about changing careers, or if he just wanted to understand how to apply the values and principles better in the domain that he was in. And I think, again, a lot of these laws that we just talked about, in addition to Denning's 3 laws, are universal, and so they're applicable across the board. They're not just specific to a technology domain. And I have a vision. I had a vision. I've had this vision for a long time, and today I thought about it, and I thought, this might ruffle a few feathers, but I envision a day when Agile is not a thing. That's just the way we operate. We don't even have to call it out. this is how we operate, and it'll hopefully continually evolve. But just the same way we were used to hierarchical and traditional styles of management, hopefully we can, in the fairly near future, at least in my lifetime, get to a point where we're not even talking about this agile thing. It would be just this thing.
This thing. Here's this thing. Here, HT.
That's a little bit meta or broad.
Well, no,
but I agree.
He's right. He's right. Is that
Yeah.
Someday it won't be agile software delivery. It's just going to be software delivery. It's not. And the distinction between waterfall and agile will be pointless because we'll only talk about the things that work. Whatever those turn out to be.
Yeah, to me, it almost feels like there's a cycle of learning and forgetting and relearning that happens in human societies. And it's like, if I look at the early Tom Gilb stuff or the early Bell Labs stuff, it's like they were doing agile stuff back then. They didn't call it agile, but the people who are breaking new ground in the 90s, right? I don't know if they were aware of the stuff that was happening in the 40s and 50s. But apparently these methods were, I can't remember if it was IBM, there was some company, I think it was IBM, who basically had a system that they used different words, but you would recognize it as an agile system of delivery. But they weren't selling it. Like the product wasn't the method. The product was something that they were using this method to build the product. And that's what made them successful. They were able to move with a quick, easy grace in the market. They just didn't tell anybody how they were doing it. And then gradually people figured this stuff out independently and said, oh, we should make this thing a thing. And so it's all sort of a snake eating its own tail at some level of analysis. I totally agree. I think we will learn this lesson completely and forget it and then relearn it probably.
Wasn't IBM's first,
years.
weren't they typewriters to begin with? Like, was that a big deal?
Probably. I don't know.
Like
I don't know.
Creating a typewriter keyboard as a iterative customer-based solution.
Could be. I believe when they were creating the first commercial computers, they were using what we would say are agile methods. But it was their secret sauce. It's how they were more competitive. So they didn't want to tell you this because that would put them at a disadvantage.
Are you familiar with Kelly Johnson?
Sure. The Skunkworks guy.
Exactly. You ever read his 14 principles?
No.
No, Boyd was the guy who did the OODA loop, but yes.
Go read his 14 principles. I would suggest strongly that at least 8 and maybe even 10 of those 14 principles are basically the 12 principles of that were rolled out in the Agile Manifesto. Working in small teams, improving collaboration, improving communication, getting rid of bureaucratic BS. Go read those 14 principles. And I would say, and that was 1948.
There you go.
So that's even earlier than, the 50s and stuff, obviously. So
totally. What about Agile 2? Have you guys checked that out?
With a number 2?
Yeah. Agile2.net, I believe.
Is that Ottinger stuff?
I don't think so.
No, that's modern. I'm sorry, that's modern Agile.
Yeah, you're thinking of Joshua Krajewski's Industrial Logic. Yeah. No, this is, I don't remember who it is. I heard them on a podcast and they were talking about it's a development of the original Agile, quote unquote, original Agile stuff, the manifesto. But it's just, it's another way that people are expanding the stuff and reapplying it. And so anyway, this podcast has become super meta.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think maybe we've reached
the end.
An end, please God. Has this been an Agile thing?
It's certainly been the thing.
I've been happy.
Agile and otherwise. Absolutely.
I'm
Jeff Singleton.
I'm Mike Marchi, coming to you from Hawaii.
I'm so jealous. We'll see you next time. That's a beach.
That is off in the distance.
Wow.
Nice.
Wish you were here.